it's me again with the third part of thinking fourth dimensionally. I hope you're ready for it, because the ending is the best. And I'm here with Snoop Dogg. And he is the original Snoop Doggy Dogg, the only Snoop Doggy Dogg in my book. And he's going to help you to understand dimensional reality, because he was born in four-dimensional reality. And I just came up with that on the spot, but it's actually true, isn't it? So if anyone knows about it, it's Neville Goddard. But Snoop Doggy Dogg as well, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to get back to where I was last night before I failed to record everything. And I had just read out from Out of This World by Neville Goddard, and the practical experience, how you imagine for what you want. So I'm just going to read on from there, and we're going on to sleep. But don't you fall asleep listening to me, please, because this is important. Anyway, desire, physical immobility bordering on sleep, and imaginary action in which self-feelingly predominates here and now are not only important factors in altering the future, but they are essential conditions in consciously projecting the spiritual self. If when the physical body is immobilized, we become possessed of the idea to do something and imagine that we are doing it here and now, and keep the imaginary action feelingly going right up until sleep ensues, we are likely to awaken out of the physical body, to find ourselves in a dimensionally larger world, with a dimensionally larger focus, and actually doing what we desired and imagined we were doing in the flesh. But whether we awaken there or not, we are actually performing the action in the fourth dimensional world, and we will reenact it in the future, here in the third dimensional world. So it would be interesting to hear if anyone's managed to do that before. They've been imagining as they fall off to sleep, and their train of thought hasn't stopped. It's carried on going into the dream. I'm pretty sure I've never done that. I've had dreams where things have come up that I've been imagining for, but not actually imagining into the dream, because I think my mind just goes off, and it's just hard to keep the attention on it just before you lose consciousness. But it's obviously possible, because Neville Goddard speaks about it, and he's definitely done that. So maybe some of you have done it as well. I would endeavour to keep trying with it. And I mean, you need to be relaxed, don't you, to go into it. So you are going to be really relaxed just before you fall asleep. It's just about maintaining that relaxed attention, I think. Anyway, every night I imagine, and then I'm just off. So far, not so good. Experience has taught me to restrict the imaginary action, to condense the idea, which is to be the object of our meditation, into a single act, and to reenact it over and over again until it has the feeling of reality. Otherwise, the attention will wander off along an associational track, and hosts of associated images will be presented to our attention. In a few seconds, they will lead us hundreds of miles away from our objective in point of space and years away in point of time. If we decide to climb a particular flight of stairs because that is the likely event to follow the realization of our desire, then we must restrict the action to climbing that particular flight of stairs. Should our attention wander off, we must bring it back to its task of climbing that flight of stairs and keep on doing so until the imaginary action has all the solidity and distinctness of reality. The idea must be maintained in the field of presentation without any sensible effort on our part. We must, with the minimum of effort, permeate the mind with the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That's a very important sentence. Minimum of effort, relaxed effort. And I think it's easy to try really hard because we really, really want our desires to be fulfilled. But we've got to just, if you know it's already happened, if you know you're in it right now, then there should be a minimum of effort because you don't need to make any effort. It's done. It's satisfaction and fulfillment that you need to be feeling, not effort. So just try and remember that minimum of effort. Don't try too hard. I think we can all do that one. Drowsiness facilitates change because it favours attention without effort. That's good, isn't it? But it must not be pushed to the stage of sleep, in which we shall no longer be able to control the movements of our attention, but rather a moderate degree of drowsiness in which we are still able to direct our thoughts. So there you go. He's saying try and keep it going up to the point of sleep and beyond. Wake up in the dream, in that imagination, in what you're imagining. But he's recognizing as well that it's very hard to keep your attention on it when you fall asleep. Or is he saying, yeah, he's saying we will no longer be able to control the movements of our attention. But I guess that means as long as you go into sleep in it, once you're in there, you're okay. You don't need to control it once you go into it because it's impressed itself on the subconscious mind, maybe. But I think that shows how hard it is to keep going when you're starting to fall asleep, but not impossible. A most effective way to embody a desire is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then in a relaxed and sleepy state, repeat over and over again like a lullaby any short phrase which implies fulfillment of our desire, such as thank you, as though we addressed a higher power for having done it for us. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. If, however, we seek a conscious projection into a dimensionally larger world, then we must keep the action going right up until sleep ensues. So he recognizes that at the end. A conscious projection into a dimensionally larger world. That would be amazing. One day. Experience an imagination with all the distinctness of reality. What would be experienced in the flesh were you to achieve your goal? And you shall, in time, meet it in the flesh as you met it in your imagination. Feed the mind with premises, that is, assertions presumed to be true, because assumptions, though unreal to the senses, if persisted in until they have the feeling of reality, will harden into facts. To an assumption, all means which promote its realization are good. It influences the behavior of all by inspiring in all the movements, the actions, and the words which tend towards its fulfillment. To understand how man molds his future in harmony with its assumption, we must know what we mean by a dimensionally larger world. That's very important. I think that's the whole aim of this chapter, because it gives you a different angle on it, the idea of the fourth dimension. This is, for me, the most important chapter of any of his books that I've read so far, for me. And everything that Neville Goddard writes is really great and deep and helpful in every way. But this goes beyond anything I've read before. Tell me what you think about that. Do you find it very deep and meaningful too? Does it help you? I think it's just amazing thinking about dimensionally larger worlds. Where was I anyway? Okay, so I'm going to read the molds bit again because I got it wrong. To understand how man molds his future in harmony with his assumption, we must know what we mean by a dimensionally larger world. For it is to a dimensionally larger world that we go to alter our future. The observation of an event before it occurs implies that the event is predetermined from the point of view of man in the three-dimensional world. Therefore, to change the conditions here in the 3 dimensions of space, we must first change them in the 4 dimensions of space. Man does not know exactly what is meant by a dimensionally larger world, and would no doubt deny the existence of a dimensionally larger self. He is quite familiar with the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height, and he feels that if there were a 4th dimension, it should be just as obvious to him as the dimensions of length, width, and height. A dimension is not a line. It is any way in which a thing can be measured that is entirely different from all other ways. That is, to measure a solid 4th dimensionally, we simply measure it in any direction except that of its length, width, and height. Is there another way of measuring an object other than those of its length, width, and height? Time measures my life without employing the 3 dimensions of length, width, and height. There is no such thing as an instantaneous object. Its appearance and disappearance are measurable. It endures for a definite length of time. We can measure its lifespan without using the dimensions of length, width, and height. Time is definitely a 4th way of measuring an object. The more dimensions an object has, the more substantial and real it becomes. A straight line which lies entirely in 1 dimension acquires shape, mass, and substance by the addition of dimensions. What new quality would time, the 4th dimension, give which would make it just as vastly superior to solids as solids are to surfaces, and surfaces are to lines. Time is a medium for changes in experience, because all changes take time. The new quality is changeability. I read something a long time ago about time and change. And maybe it came from me reading this. Maybe I was thinking about time and change and I was looking it up on Google and trying to find something about it. I think that's what happened. And there was so little, but there was one thing, and I'm going to try and find it again and read some of it to you. It was one piece that somebody had written about time being change. And it is change, isn't it? It's how we measure change. And so you could call time change instead. I don't know. But the thing is, because we think of time as linear, and there's the past, the present, and the future, and we think of it as back then, here, now, in the future, it really takes a lot away from the idea that time is just change. Everything is moving, even though, some things obviously are moving, but when you look at something that is a solid object, like a table or a chair or a television, our mind tells us that that object is still. And unless we make a concerted effort to remind ourselves that no object is completely still, because each object is composed of a mass of molecules and atoms, and it's continually moving, and it's continually moving towards its demise. Isn't the right word, because it's not alive as far as I know. The end of its existence. It's going to rot and decay, and everything's getting older all the time. We can easily be tricked by our minds and think everything stays the same and nothing changes, when everything is changing all the time. So time is change. And it's funny, if we just got rid of the idea of time and we just thought about change instead, I wonder how that would change things for us. Rather than thinking into the future when we're old, just thinking about the changes that we're gradually changing. I mean, we are thinking that as well, but do you know what I mean? Just it just takes, for me, it takes away the idea of time as something real. It's just change, but we've put the idea of time, we've slapped that on it, and we need it, don't we? Because we need to function in this world, and we need to give ourselves deadlines and do things quickly. But we're really pushing against change. We're trying to do things quick. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know. I'll find that piece of work and speak about that person's ideas, because they were good. But yeah, let's get back to Neville Goddard. The new quality is changeability. That's what started me off. Observe that if we bisect a solid, its cross-section will be a surface. By bisecting a surface, we obtain a line. And by bisecting a line, we get a point. This means that a point is but a cross-section of a line, which is in turn, it's gone off again like it did last night. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Which is in turn but a cross-section of a solid, which is in turn, if carried to its logical conclusion, but a cross-section of a four-dimensional object. We cannot avoid the inference that all three-dimensional objects are but cross-sections of four-dimensional bodies, which means when I meet you, I meet a cross-section of the four-dimensional you, the four-dimension self that is not seen. To see the four-dimensional self, I must see every cross-section or moment of your life from birth to death and see them all as coexisting. My focus should take in the entire array of sensory impressions which you have experienced on earth, plus those you might encounter. I should see them not in the order in which they were experienced by you, but as a present whole. Because change is the characteristic of the fourth dimension, I should see them in a state of flux as a living, animated whole. I can almost imagine that. Just that feels really spiritual to me. Just something just moving, and you're seeing everything at the same time, even though that seems impossible. But I imagine that's how things are, and we only see a fraction of what is actually there. I was going to say something else about this, the four-dimensional self. So every body is to see the four-dimensional self. It would be from not even the moment of birth, from the moment of conception to the moment of death, and everything happening at the same time. So contemplate that more. Every time you look at somebody, just imagine you're seeing everything in their eyes. If we have all this clearly fixed in our minds, what does it mean to us in this three-dimensional world? It means that if we can move along time's length, we can see the future and alter it as we so desire. This world which we think so solidly real is but a shadow, out of which and beyond which we may at any time pass. It is an abstraction from a more fundamental and dimensionally larger world, a more fundamental world abstracted from a still more fundamental and dimensionally larger world, and so on to infinity. The absolute is unattainable by any means or analysis, no matter how many dimensions we add to the world. Man can prove the existence of a dimensionally larger world simply by focusing his attention on an invisible state and imagining that he sees and feels it. If he remains concentrated in this state, his present environment will pass away and he will awaken in a dimensionally larger world where the object of his contemplation will be seen as a concrete, objective reality. Intuitively, I feel that were he to abstract his thoughts from this dimensionally larger world and retreat still farther within his mind, he would again bring about an externalization of time. He would discover that every time he retreats into his inner mind and brings about an externalization of time, space becomes dimensionally larger. And he would therefore conclude that both time and space are serial, and that the drama of life is but the climbing of a multitudinous dimensional time block. Scientists will one day explain why there is a serial universe, but in practice, how we use this serial universe to change the future is more important. To change the future, we need only concern ourselves with two worlds in the infinite series. The world we know by reason of our bodily organs, and the world we perceive independently of our bodily organs. So isn't that amazing that he speaks of dimensionally larger worlds? I always think there's this world and there's the imagination, but there's many, many more. I remember once when I was younger, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I felt like I left my body and I was looking down on it. And then something similar happened when I was asleep, but it was in a dream, so I didn't feel like I was outside of my body. And I was running, and I was running away from somebody. And this has happened a few times, the running idea. And it starts off okay. And then my legs start to feel so heavy, and it's just like I'm trying to run through water. And then it becomes like I'm trying to run through mud or concrete. And no matter what I do, can't seem to move them. It takes so much effort, and it's almost like I'm being pushed backwards as well. Let me know if any of you have had that experience. It's whenever there's something fearful in my dream and I'm running. It's okay in the beginning, but then it gets almost impossible and it's scary. Anyway, this one time I remember running, and my environment changed, and I went into, it was just white. And then I went further through the white, and it was getting harder and harder to run. And I don't really remember after that. But I bought this book about astral projection, and it was saying about going through different dimensions in the dream world. And that if you go too far, we're supposed to be attached to the body by this silver thread. You can detach and then you won't wake up. So I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe I felt I need to go back now. I don't think I got that far anyway. But I did feel like things were changing around me, and I was going through different worlds. So that was strange, but anything can happen in a dream, can't it? But yeah, I definitely believe that there are dimensionally larger worlds, definitely. Maybe when we leave our body, we will experience more of that. I dare say we will. But for the time being, let's work on the fourth dimension. Let's not go into the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, unless it's easy for us. Has anyone ever woken up in a dream? Because I used to do that sometimes. I haven't done that for ages. And you really feel you're in a different dimension then. Because what I noticed was whatever I thought about would manifest immediately, instantaneously. So that's why I wrote a very short ebook, and it was about dreams and the imagination. And I think part of the reason it's like that in the dream world is to teach us how it is in the three-dimensional world. Because you can manifest immediately there. There's no time. It happens straight away. But it's the same principle. You just imagine it and it's there. And you can just change people, and It's fun. And luckily here, even though we think, oh, I wish it would just happen, luckily we have time, because we can change things. Because imagine if we were just imagining anything and we're like, no, what did I just think of? Oh, it would be terrible. So it's like a safety catch. So I've gone on and on as usual. I hope you liked that. 30 minutes. Well done if you stayed to the end. Let me know what you think of Neville Goddard's thoughts on the fourth dimension. Does it help you to imagine better, thinking that you are actually going into a different dimension and it's real? And I think one of the most important things to remember is when you're imagining, it's happening there and then in the fourth dimension. And no one could take that away from you. It's not just, oh, I'm doing a little airy-fairy exercise and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It's actually happening there and then in a different dimension. And if you persist in it, it will start to manifest in this dimension. That's the way it works. So again, I think that's a very motivating factor. You've got to remember, you're not imagining something that's going to happen in the future. Although that's true as well, because it will happen in the future here. You've got to think, this is happening now. This is happening now. You just see the result when change has happened. It's just change, isn't it? It's not time, it's change. So many interesting points in that chapter that I need to contemplate. Okay, I'm going to upload this now and I look forward to your comments. Please like if you like, and if you haven't already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Okay, thanks for listening, everybody. Take care of yourselves and look forward to hearing from you. Bye.